Hey, it's me again, Bryan Alaspa, author of a number of books available to you on Kindle, and I wanted to come to you again, do something just a tiny bit different, and just tell you about one of my books. I've done that from time to time rather than doing a reading. Sometimes listening to a guy drone on and on reading his own book is not necessarily that exciting, but sometimes people are interested and want to know a little bit about what's behind the book. And this one that I wanted to talk about is one that is for sale for you Kindle folks, exclusively for Kindle and Nook people. It's called Sin Eater. Sin Eater, Book 1. It's kind of an interesting story. I originally wanted to create a comic book character. That was the plan. I've been a fan of comic books for a long, long time and always wanted to write comic books, although I have yet to get a comic book company to let me do that. Hint, hint to Marvel, DC, Image, any of you comic book companies out there. But anyway, I wanted to create a character that would have a power that would be different, and I felt like pretty much everything had been done from, I mean, you name it, and everybody's been done. And I knew that the stories of people who were known as sin eaters lived years ago, and the legends were that these men had the ability to absorb the sins of the dead, and the way it worked was, this was back in the time when the church was selling something called indulgences, where you could pay the church to sort of buy off your sin and reduce your time in purgatory to get into heaven. And these guys said that they could sort of bypass all that, and what the families would do is they would hire them at much lower rates than the indulgences and prepare a meal for them. And I've heard two different versions of it. One version says that they would eat the meal in the house of someone who was dying or recently died. I've even heard that they would eat in the same room as the person who had died recently, and I've even heard would eat the meal on the coffin of the person who died. Regardless of how it was done, it all involved eating a meal that was prepared to them for them by the family. The idea being that they would be symbolically eating their sins, absorbing the sins into themselves, so that the deceased could then go on into heaven. And I thought, well, gosh, that's interesting. What if the whole eating thing was not really necessary? But what if this person actually had the ability to absorb the sins of the dying? What would that do to a person? What would that do to their own soul, to witness the sins of a soul that has recently passed? What if he got a particularly sinful, horribly sinful person? What would that do to them? Would that burden him? What would that do to his own chances? What would it be like to know that there is an afterlife of some sort, but you only ever see the dead and what horrible things they've done throughout their lives? You don't actually get to see what heaven or what's beyond your little absorbing process that there is. What would that be like? So I created this character, named him Grady. For some reason in my mind I pictured him as Irish, red-haired. I kind of pictured him looking like this guy I worked with at a radio station in Rockford, actually. He was the morning host. For some reason that's just the image I had in my head of him. Freckle-faced, kind of young-looking with red hair. I always pictured him wearing like a long trench coat, and I'd imagine he would be pretty dark and morose, because when you're dealing with death on a daily basis, I imagine it probably is going to grate on you a little bit. So it was a compelling character, but I could never find anyone to draw it, and I could never find a comic book company to publish it. So then I next published it at a short-lived online endeavor called Keep It Coming, where people would subscribe to certain stories, and authors would then continue to write their stories, and the people who subscribed would then get an updated chapter. I believe it was every week, and everyone who subscribed to those stories had to pay a small fee, and then the authors all got a portion of that fee. And so I submitted Sin Eater, and it was accepted. And I wrote the first whole story arc, known as The Condemned Man, for that particular website, Keep It Coming. Fortunately, Keep It Coming went under. I had completed the first story arc. I thought it was some of the best writing I'd done. I still think it is. And then Keep It Coming went under after I had sort of started the second arc. The second arc was known as The Man in the House, and it was written in the same style initially. And those chapters for Keep It Coming had to be relatively short. They weren't, I forget what the word count was now. I could probably go back and look at the story. But So that's why the whole condemned man story is set into the chapters that it is, and then the first part of The Man in the House is set in that, and then I kind of abandoned it, Keep It Coming went under, and I sort of forgot about it for a while, then decided I would combine the two stories into one volume, make that part one, and perhaps publish it as a book, and that's how Sin Eater Part 1 came about. Or Book 1, as it's known. And I have to say that Grady is a character that never quite leaves me. I will put him aside for a while, sometimes for a year or so, but he always comes back. He's very compelling to me. He's very powerful to me. I have a whole universe for him in my mind. And I don't know, because the stories are so emotionally draining for me, they're always emotionally draining for me. There's always a scene in every chapter and every story arc I've written following the Sin Eaters, following Grady's adventures, that has left me emotionally drained. That's often why it takes me a long time to get to the next book. So, Sin Eater Book 1 is out there. It's available now. Sin Eater Book 2 is written. It's currently being edited, and I do hope to have it available sometime in 2011. Sin Eater Book 3, the writing has started, and I've introduced a new character in Book 3 that I think may get a spin-off series. So there might actually be a later spin-off series to Sin Eater at some point. So I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you go out and get involved in the life of Grady, the Sin Eater, and will want to come back and see his further adventures as I bring it about. The second book is called Sin Eater Book 2, Destiny, and it kind of reveals his origin story. And you get to kind of meet Grady's father and things like that as well. So if you happen to be listening to this in March of 2011, all my Kindle books are currently on sale for 99 cents. If it's any other time after that, if it's not March of 2011, I'm sorry, but it's not going to likely be 99 cents, but I'm sure it will still be at a very affordable price for you. So that's my story about Sin Eater, Book 1, available as an ebook exclusively for you at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com for Kindle and Nook. And thank you very much, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.